Take a look at this map of the Indian subcontinent at the beginning of the 16th century. The once dominant Delhi Sultanate has fractured. What you are seeing is a geopolitical power vacuum, with dozens of regional kingdoms locked in a struggle over shifting borders and limited resources. That disunity created an opening. In 1526, a young Central Asian ruler named Babur marched his armies across this terrain, navigating the narrow mountain passes that separated his homeland from the wealth of India. Babur arrived with a distinct technological advantage that India had never faced on a mass scale: field artillery. At the First Battle of Panipat, he unleashed matchlock muskets and heavy cannons, disrupting a military status quo that had relied on war elephants and massed infantry for centuries. Looking at this top-down tactical diagram of Panipat, we can see exactly how Babur defeated a much larger force. He utilized a strategy called Tulukhma. By anchoring his center with physical barriers and artillery, he split his cavalry into rapid mobile units that swept around the flanks, trapping the massive army of Ibrahim Lodi in a pincer movement. By combining gunpowder with highly disciplined cavalry tactics, Babur secured a decisive victory. This event wiped the old political slate clean and ignited a chain of conquests that would build one of the most complex administrative machines of the early modern world. Before the later Mughal emperors could fully realize that machine, an Afghan ruler named Sher Shah Suri laid the literal groundwork during a brief interruption of Mughal rule. He carved out a vast network of stone-paved highways, most notably the Grand Trunk Road, which allowed rapid military movement and communication across the subcontinent. To lubricate the trade traveling along those new roads, the state needed a standardized economy. If you examine this artifact, you are looking at the rupiah, a silver coin with a strictly regulated weight and intricate script. By standardizing the currency, local merchants from Bengal to Kabul could trade without constantly recalculating exchange rates. Decades later, Emperor Akbar engineered the bureaucracy required to manage this wealth. This hierarchical flowchart illustrates his mansabdari system. Every military commander and civil servant was assigned a specific numerical rank, or mansab. In return for maintaining a set number of cavalry, the state granted them a jagir, the right to collect revenue from a specific piece of land, tying every noble's income directly to the emperor's approval. That flow of authority is visible as this chart morphs into a map of the empire itself. To maintain control, Akbar divided the entire subcontinent into organized administrative zones, provinces called subas, which were broken down into districts called sarkars, and further subdivided into local parganas. But force and bureaucracy were only part of the equation. Akbar recognized that long-term stability required ideological unity. He promoted Sul-e-Kul, a policy of universal peace and religious tolerance. By strategically inviting Raj kings and diverse religious scholars into his inner circle, he converted former battlefield rivals into loyal stakeholders of the empire. By intertwining standardized silver, paved highways, strict bureaucratic ranks, and religious inclusion, the state transformed a fragile military conquest into an efficient, self-sustaining economic engine. With the economic engine humming, Akbar's successors, Jahangir and Shah Jahan, channeled the resulting wealth into a different medium: visual propaganda. Art and architecture became essential tools for projecting absolute state power. We see this illustrated at Fatehpur Sikri. The scale of structures like the Buland Darwaza was designed with a specific psychological intent. By dwarfing the human figures standing at its base, the architecture reinforced the idea that the emperor's authority was divinely ordained and unshakable. Look at the sheer density of detail in this throne. Concentrating such wealth at the physical center of the court sent a clear message to visiting diplomats and rival kings. The empire possessed resources so vast that military challenge appeared futile. This cultural output reached its zenith with monumental tombs. Structures like the Taj Mahal, with their flawless geometric symmetry, stood as enduring stamps of imperial permanence, engineered to dominate the landscape for centuries. Behind the artistry, the state remained heavily militarized. Sprawling urban complexes like the Red Fort in Delhi were ringed by impenetrable defensive walls. They served as fortified administrative hearts where the wealth of the state could be securely managed and protected. The towering gates, the intricate thrones, and the sweeping marble domes of this era were calculated physical manifestations of the empire's power, designed to secure the compliance of a massive population. But the machine had limits. This map tracks Emperor Aurangzeb pushing the borders to their maximum into the southern Deccan Plateau. To fund these wars, he raised taxes and abandoned inclusive policies. As the treasury drained, fractures erupted across the map's outer edges. Centralized control sparked fierce regional pushback. Like the Ahoms in the northeast, the agricultural Jats, and the mobile Marathas utilized the terrain to their advantage, engaging the imperial army in relentless guerrilla warfare. In the Punjab, the political and religious pressure forced community groups to evolve. The Sikhs, initially a spiritual movement, transformed into an organized, militarized force, taking up arms to directly oppose the overextended state. The empire was never dismantled by a single, overwhelming foreign conqueror. Instead, starved of revenue and fighting rebellions on every flank, the administrative machine overheated under the weight of its own relentless expansion. By the 18th century, the dynasty's direct political authority rapidly faded. As the centralized bureaucracy collapsed, regional kingdoms and local governors reclaimed the map, leaving the later emperors with little actual power. Yet, while the rulers lost their power, their physical footprint remained anchored in the subcontinent skyline. The mosques, gardens, and fortifications continued to define the urban landscape of India's major cities. More importantly, the invisible machinery survived. The regional powers that replaced the emperor, and later the British colonial administration, adopted the exact provincial borders, revenue collection methods, and standardized trade routes that had been laid down by the Mughal state. The empire's ultimate legacy was the creation of a sophisticated administrative and cultural blueprint. These systems permanently reshaped the map, forming the structural foundations for the modern nations of the Indian subcontinent.